Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, afternoon.
You are live on air. And as Davina used to say, please do not swear.
As soon as
How
you
you
said that, that's what I thought.
as soon as I said that, that's what you thought.
Hmm.
How you all doing today?
Good, good, good. It's a
Yeah,
little bit cold, but yeah,
It
definitely
is
doing
getting
well.
a
but
bit chilly,
sunny.
isn't it? Where is everybody calling in from today?
It's based in South East London, Deptford. That's where I am.
I'm in
Yourself.
Reading.
You're in Reading,
Yeah.
up north. Is it a bit chilly, bit colder up there? Is it? Maybe, perhaps,
Across to the west, so we're the same, sunny but freezing.
but freezing. And you, Sabah?
I'm in Soho today in the office.
Oh, you're in the office today, so you're calling out from the headquarters.
In Soho, yeah, so one of our offices.
Oh, fantastic! So it's really, really great to see you all and to be reconnected. I know Mo from different meetings that we've had at and also the two of you from the last series that we had about appearance. And yeah, just really glad to be back. So I'd really like to start off. We're going to be speaking about family, and please do make it as inclusive as you like. Bring your whole self, and there may be serious, very, very, very serious stories and different things you'd like to share about yourselves and your backstories. And of course, there may be some humorous things. So I just say, bring your whole self and let's have a really good show of conversation to inspire others. So I would first like to speak about growing up in a family, in a cultural, within our culture, and what that was like. And I'd like to ask the panel, what are some of the things that made you feel as if you were growing up differently? So we're talking about growing up differently within our own cultures in a British society. Does anybody have anything to share about what may have made them feel growing up differently?
I don't mind going. So hair was the big one, I think, for me, especially where I grew up. So I grew up in Watford, but the kind of schools I went to were like predominantly white. My family is white. My mum is white. So it was hair for me where I really wanted to have hair like my mum, which was very wavy and kind of more straight. And then you've got me with typical like black hair. And she'd put my hair in all these like wacky hairstyles that no one else had. And I just felt like I stood out. And I really hated it. Like she used to do these like two bunchies, one at the top of my head and one at the back of my head, and it was my absolute least favorite hairstyle in the world. Or like little Darth Vader like twists at the front of my head. I hated it so much. But obviously, like when you've got hair like mine, you've got to do something to make your life a bit easier.
Do you feel like it would have made a difference to you if mum knew how to manage your textured hair type?
Yeah, I definitely like even today, like if my mum had more, and especially because obviously the internet for her when she was growing up, even when I was growing up, wasn't a huge thing. So there wasn't this whole YouTube family of all these things you can do with your hair and all these products. So yeah, definitely would have made my life a bit easier. And I think just being surrounded by more Black people who are
Yeah.
just owning that kind of like, this is my hair, I look fabulous, would have helped me.
And because you wasn't naturally surrounded by people that you could look at that were like yourself, you didn't have anybody to talk to, I'm presuming,
Yeah.
about it.
I don't even think I knew that there was something to talk to people about. I
Right.
remember I had like a black Barbie and I had a little like a little baby doll, like a little Johnson. His name was Johnson, little black baby doll. But everything else, like all the rest of my Barbies were white. I've got like a little Annabelle doll when I was little, and the little hair people. You know, when you got the head,
Yes.
just their hair.
Troll dolls.
Yeah,
Oh, people. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah.
little head things where you could do their makeup and their hair, always like straight blonde hair. So I literally had no idea of anything
Of
really.
anything. Yeah, that is thank you so much for sharing. That is so insightful. And actually it's a story where you're speaking so many other people's stories just by what you're saying that have experienced exactly the same thing. What about yourselves, Mo and Sabah?
So I guess mine was slightly different. When I was in primary school, there wasn't many black people there. So one of the things that made me definitely feel different was packed lunches. I guess everyone would come with their dairy Lunchables, or they would come with their sandwiches, and I would come with rice and cassava leaves, which is a Sierra Leonean dish. That was something that to me occurred, and hearing maybe some of the comments that some of the kids made of, it's quite dark in color, so just saying, oh, it doesn't look like this, or it looks like this, that made me feel really different. But I also embraced it, and going in towards and transitioning towards secondary school, I felt like a bit more inclusive. There was a lot more black people that I could relate to, so I wasn't the only one that was bringing in native and cultural food, and I kind of liked that.
Did the cassava lunch, like the leaf and the rice, did it make you feel a little bit awkward? Like, did you feel embarrassed, or did you embrace it?
I think at first, whilst I was young, it was definitely something that I was maybe embarrassed about. Being the only person, and having people point it out and call it out, I just wanted to maybe fit in and be with the same as everyone else. There was even a point, or there was a time when I was having school lunches instead of actually packed lunches, and that was something that I remember saying to my mom. I really want to have the school lunches there. The food there is nice. I don't want to have rice at school and then at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think again, after I kind of started feeling myself out and understanding, do you know what, it's okay for me to be different and for me to eat the food because I like it anyway. So yeah.
That's great. So it's good that you was able to embrace it and still appreciate both worlds.
Yeah.
And Sabah?
I love what you said, Mo, about the school lunches, because I used to have like parathas in like primary school. And I loved it. I mean, maybe it's like my skewed like memory now. I don't have that food as often as I would like to. And I remember thinking back then, like, open my packed lunch and that's what I'm getting. Really exciting. But for me, it's mostly around secondary school. I actually grew up in East Ham, but I went to school in Essex. So it was quite a drive. And it was kind of, that meant my mum had to drop us off. She had to pick me up. We weren't allowed to hang out with our friends after school. And, when you're 13, 14, 16, 17, you have a responsibility that you have to go home all together with your siblings. You're not allowed to go out. There's no bus route home from back then it was quite a long one. I don't even know it now. So it's like I wasn't ever allowed to hang out with friends. And that just meant like you weren't sharing that part of your life and outside of school, so everything was so school bound. That definitely made me feel left out, like, oh, they're all going out after school and I can't do it. So that was definitely a big thing for me.
Do you think that was a fitting part of your kind of like culture the culture?
Yeah, we were definitely not allowed to hang out with friends after school, even if we probably lived local. And if we were, like, you had to be home by 4 p.m. or before it got dark. And, in winter, it's already dark. You leave school 3:30, here it's dark. So even that was a great excuse. But then I wouldn't tell my friends I live so far away. It's just like, oh, I'm not allowed to. Yeah, I'm not allowed to. It's just so much to explain that you just hide that part of yourself because it's too much to deal with.
Yeah, because it's peer pressure as well, and then there's the questions, but why? And then you feel slightly isolated because, of course, there's that difference. I wanted to ask, were there things about yourself or your culture you tried to hide because you thought they may not be accepted? And I think that Sabah has kind of touched on that just now by saying, I couldn't really have those conversations. I didn't really want to go there because I felt like it might open a can of worms with more questions and kind of more pressure. Do you have any more examples, Sabah or Mo or Renee, where there may have been things culturally that you try to hide because you didn't think they may be accepted?
I think this is quite a difficult one. I felt like definitely growing up in school, I tried to almost leave home at home and come to school as like a different version of myself. And again, I don't know whether that was a case of me just trying to understand in terms of identity and, what was acceptable. Part of what I wanted to do was fit in and just be one of the people that didn't really stand out. I think one of the things that I had to kind of understand was it's okay for me to maybe stand out or be different in my own kind of way. So I think culturally there wasn't really anything that I could specifically say I tried to hide, but I know that there was times within my life where I was maybe just not really embracing my culture at all.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really be saying or shouting, you know, I'm from Sierra Leone, I'm African. I would just be like, if someone asked where I'm from, I say I was born in London. That's the only thing.
You're from London.
Yeah.
So one of your colleagues has said, laughed, ha ha ha. Sleepovers for me was just in the movies.
Oh God.
In the comments section.
Yeah, no sleepovers.
Yeah, so just
no sleepovers
on television, it doesn't mean that everybody has those experiences. And would you say that, thinking about things from the education system point of view, was you able to bring your whole self? Like, we've all done these, given examples of school. Would you say, you know, now at work, you know, diversity inclusion is so important. It's about bringing your whole self and having an inclusive environment. What do you think about the education system then? Do you think you could really bring your whole self and integrate that into education?
I don't think I ever really, I think I didn't really realize I was different because everyone around me looked the same, and you don't look at yourself that much when you're little. And then you look at your hand and you're like, oh wait, different color. So I didn't really notice it. So I was the kind of, you know, wearing knee-high stripy pink and red socks to school and getting told off and getting my nose pierced when I was 15 and walking around school like it wasn't a problem. So I never really had any, like, I was allowed to go to sleepovers. Sleepovers were like the best.
Yeah.
I think the only thing for me, again, is hair. Like, it's commonplace to cover your hair when you sleep if you've got some kind of protective style on it. Yeah. So, and I've seen it on TV where it's like, I don't want to be the random girl at the sleepover who's got to like wrap my hair up. So I just wouldn't. And then my hair would get ruined and then I'd get in trouble for it. But it was easier than having to explain it, especially because I didn't really understand it myself. So I couldn't explain it very well as to like what I was doing and why I had to wear this thing on my head.
Yeah. Do you remember when you first learned about the thing, like the hair covering? Or was it given to you and just said, put this on at night because it will help keep your hair tidy?
It was a pair of tights. It was a pair of tights with the legs cut off, tied up at the top, or like tied around your head to keep it on. It was that, and it was my mum giving it to me. But again, because I didn't see it anywhere, obviously my mum wasn't doing it because she's white, and I didn't have siblings or anything like that. So I was just like, why am I doing this? No one in my life is doing this. I don't understand. So I think I just didn't do it and got in trouble.
Yeah. I wore tights on my head when I was younger. That was what we done. We had our hair plaited and we put the tights on to keep it tidy. But growing up, so many other people had the tights on their head as well, so it was normal, right? So yeah, it's hearing your stories is really, really interesting. We can come back to it, but I'm going to move on slightly to parenting techniques. So I'd like to ask, please, can you share some stories about your parents' expectations when you were growing up? Please, can you share your stories about your parents' expectations when you were growing up? 1, 2 stories from each of you would be really great to.
So I guess I can kick off. It starts with engineer, doctor, or.
Literally, I was going to say the same. I was just like, should I wait?
No, I definitely have to give a super shout out to my mum. She was really, really strong. I would say a really strong Black woman. And from a young age, I remember she tried to instill some really core values within me. To this day, I still remember her saying, you know, you are at a disadvantage. You are a Black man. But that doesn't have to be your story. So whatever you do, be more than just a Black man. Try and exert yourself. Try and reach higher than that. Try and tell your story in the way that you want to say it, rather than the story that's kind of given to you or just put on you. And that's something that stuck with me my whole life. So definitely that's one of the parenting techniques I think my mom did really, really well. Having an open space where we can have a conversation. I think especially in the African household, it's difficult traditionally for us to maybe open up and be just honest with each other. But that was something that I knew my mom really wanted to work on. So I remember every Sundays we would be sitting down and it would be like, let's discuss what our week was like. And everyone would just go around and then we'd all kind of just conversate and have ideas of how we can go through or deal with whatever we're going through. And yeah, I feel like that really helped develop me as a person and as a character, and just my ability to just talk to people and just to listen as well. So yeah.
How thank you for sharing that. How does it feel to get to a certain age and then for your parent to turn around and say, you know, hey, you need to know something out there in the world, you're at a disadvantage, and you know, you're going to have a bit of a shorter straw and you're going to have to work so much harder. Is there some kind of subconscious pressure as a Black man that you then innately begin to walk around with on a daily basis, just from a young age, like a parent telling you what you have to expect?
Yeah, you know, I actually felt like that pressure's there already, but maybe I was unaware of it, or maybe people are unaware of it. So I received it in a really positive way, because it was like, okay, at least now I'm aware and I know that there's extra things that I have to do, or maybe why I am in certain situations and maybe I'm treated in certain ways. At least I'm aware of that. So yeah, I think the pressure was already there. So I think if anything, my mom helped alleviate that pressure and just make me aware of that, so I can learn how to navigate through it from an early stage.
You probably felt it in different environments, but you didn't quite know what it was.
Yeah.
And you've got comments here from other people at AND who are saying, you know, someone has said the same, you know, you have to work twice as hard. The expectation was doctor, engineer, lawyer. Someone has said, if you get left behind, you'll get hit, someone has said. So there was a lot of pressure in as well from one of your colleagues explaining that, you know, it was immensely pressurizing. And I guess that most of the pressure from the parents was because they realized the disparity and how far away you were from the goals in comparison to somebody that was white and British, and feeling that immense pressure as part of it with you. And sometimes parents making some really great decisions on your behalf and maybe not others because of all of the pressures that are around that. Anyone else want to share?
I mean, both my parents are immigrants, so they only understand like doctor, lawyer, accountant, like, you know, those jobs that are jobs back home. And when they came here, they obviously, like, my dad is self-employed, he runs a business, and it's different. So he didn't, I guess, want or understand, and doesn't understand office jobs. Like, what other jobs are there out there? He didn't understand. And, you know, until I started working in an office, I didn't understand like what it means. There's not that language you're having around you. There aren't people going to work 9 to 5. You know, he'd work 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. His hours would be different. At one point, he was a driving instructor. Another point, he owned a chicken shop. Then he owned a kebab shop. And then he's become a DIY man, like a DIY shop. There's so many different things he's done. And I think, you know, in their eyes, it was very much, well, if you're not, like, they're still at the bottom of that chain rather than at the top. And in order for the kids to succeed, it's becoming one of those occupations. And so they didn't feel like they could boast about us other than saying, oh yes, I have 6 kids, and they've all gone to university. But then like the next question is, oh, is any of them a doctor or a lawyer? Well, don't talk about that. But, you know, they go to university, and it's a bit like, I mean, it's pretty awesome. You've got 6 kids who all went to uni. Like, you should be proud of that. We all have jobs they don't understand, I think, even to this day. But I get it. They didn't grow up in this world, and, you know, half of our friends sometimes don't understand what jobs we do. So I don't expect our parents to either.
Yeah, do you think it's not taken us quite so seriously?
Yeah, and I mean, unless you're going to go and tell your parents like, oh, I earn this much, and then they're like, oh, okay then. Right, I think doctors earn that much too, and you're like, yeah, and I don't do this much hours, and I don't do shift work, but, you know, they are amazing people, but X, Y, Z, and then they're like, oh, okay, you are successful, but how can I tell my friends and your family that you're better than them because you're not doing it? This is like, I guess, society and like the culture it plays in. It's just funny, I think, thinking back.
Yeah, thank you so much. Somebody's written from one of the Andes have written, my cousins were my competition. I don't know if anybody anybody else experienced that. You did you, Renee?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sibling rivalry, right? So obviously my mum and her sister, it's just sibling rivalry. You've both got kids and they both need to be better than the other. And I think I succeeded in winning that competition. And I think my mum would agree. But I'm very different to you guys of like, my mum was a single mum, so she didn't really work. And seeing her kind of as I got older and was able to kind of, feed myself after school, going back into college and getting qualified, and she's now studying for her degree and things like that. And she doesn't work in an office. She's a qualified electrical engineer, and now she's teaches it and all that kind of stuff. So seeing that side of it, I was the opposite of, there were so many jobs I could do because I've got this woman in my life who is an electrical engineer. So there were no jobs that I couldn't do. I could be a mechanic. I could be all of these like male, like dominated. And if you're going to make an assumption, you assume that more men do it. So working in IT and going into being like a software engineer and things like that, I was like, yeah, I can do that. There was absolutely no questions. Like I never saw a glass ceiling in that respect. Yeah. So I think her expectations for me were just do well, and I did. So I think she's quite happy.
Fantastic. That's great. I think as well, like it's so inspiring to hear that your mum has got has the kind of role that she has done what she studied and gone on to do. I think it's so inspiring to hear that. We need more female engineers, and I'd just like to go on a little bit actually, and just I know you explained, Renee, earlier that your mum's white and how you grew up. So I'd just like to ask you, what was it like growing up in an environment where you was the only mixed race person in your immediate family?
I just don't think I realized. Even today, I'll walk around and be like, oh wait, yeah, I'm different. Like I genuinely just don't think I realized that there was a difference, especially because it's family. So they're not sitting there pointing at you like, oh, why she look different? Because I've grown up with them and I've always known them. So yeah, I really don't know. Like I just didn't notice a difference because a lot of my family are boys, so all my cousins are boys. So it was very much just like running around, rolling in mud, climbing trees. Like there was no difference to us.
Yeah, and that's really refreshing to hear actually, because I know that there's a lot of experience more often than not where people do have lots of controversial experiences coming from a mixed race background, being more settled in one culture or another, or maybe not accepted. So I think that the fact that you've had such a balanced experience is really refreshing to hear, especially as a presenter, because I come across lots of different people with lots of different experiences, and yours is very unique. What about interracial relationships? I'd really like to hear from each of you about any experiences you've had yourself. I have lots of examples of people being in interracial relationships, the kind of stares they get or questions they get asked and things like that. And I'd like to know if any of you have had interracial relationships yourself. Of course, Renee, you came from an interracial relationship, and any stories that you can share about that.
I'm in one now. We live together. I'm assuming he's listening, so hello. I assume I have told him. But yeah, so I'm in one now with this blonde-haired, green-eyed man. And we went to Sicily recently, and as soon as we left our kind of apartment for the first time, cars were slowing down. People were stopping what they were eating or turning from their conversations and were point blank just staring at us. And I realized, and he realized, and we just didn't say anything to each other until we got to the beach. 5-minute walk, if that. Every single person we crossed stared at us. And we got to the beach, and I was like, everyone is staring. And he was like, oh, God, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable. And we went through this balance of like, are they staring at me because I'm black? Are they staring at him because he's so pale? Are they staring at us because we're together? Is it because he's got tattoos on his chest? So they're staring at that? And we never got our answer, but every single place we went in Sicily, whether we were on a beach, in a city, like we went to Palermo, like the capital, I think, loads of places, no one was rude, No one was dismissive or anything like that, but everyone stared, and it was so uncomfortable.
Wow. It must have felt, yeah, you must have really felt like you're sort of like in the spotlight. My friend actually is Italian, and she has said to me that, you know, it can be like that, but it isn't just unique to Italy. I think just places in general where people are not used to seeing people of color will stare, but it's not right to be staring, right? It's just like, why are you staring at me? I'm human just like you. What about yourself, Mo? And
so I don't know, for me it's a difficult subject. I feel like, yes, I am in an interracial relationship at the moment. She's half German, white, and half Black Brazilian. But I have been in previous ones where it's been English, white, fully. And for me, it's a difficult one. There's been a few situations where the culture has just been so different that like certain things have just shocked me. So where I come from, for example, if you have darker gums, it's almost seen as a trait of beauty. It's a good thing, like a beauty spot that we would say. And I've almost been questioned, like, oh my God, your gums are black. Do you need to go to the dentist? Like, I've had those conversations. Yeah, I know why. I've had these conversations before, and there's been so many situations where it's like, oh, you can't meet this person in my family, cousin, friend, or whatever, because they're not actually that okay with Black people, or they're kind of low-key racist. And just being in those situations has been kind of a shock to me, because it's just not something that you would expect. I think we're still in really early stages of it being normalized and it being visualized, and we can see that it's something that should be normal. I don't think we're too far away from where it was almost taboo to be in interracial relationships. Even now, my brother, he's married into an Indian family, and seeing the culmination of that and the wedding and the cultures kind of clashing and coming together, that for me was really beautiful. And I know that that is almost something that's quite rare. And the fact that it is rare and it's seen as a taboo and all of these things, I still think that there's still there's too much work that we need to do to kind of make it feel, or make it be, just a bit more inclusive and a bit more normal. But yeah, there's many things that I guess I could reel off the top of my head that have just been wild situations that I've been in.
Oh, let's hear some wild situations. Come on, man.
Let's go to Sabah first.
We've got a bit more time. We've got quite a bit of time left, so let's hear some wild situations.
Yeah, Mo, I want to hear it as well. My husband is Black, so I mean, I know, like, we've been through so much, and we've been together. It's just gone 13 years, so a long time. A lot of experience of racism. You know, we're married. We got married 6 years ago, so a while ago. Lots of racism towards us, my family as well, external people staring at us. I think I remember like going to Paris once with him, and we were just walking, holding hands, and Indian men, you know, started swearing at me and calling me horrible names. And I was just like, what? Okay, I guess it was like my first experience out of London. And I was like, what is going on? And it kept happening because they were like there were tourist sites and they were selling stuff. So, you know, these are guys who are like, come maybe like fresh from back home, and they've just never seen like a brown woman with a dark man. That's like the worst thing someone like me could do. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to start kissing my boyfriend. I'm going to start kissing my boyfriend in front of you guys just to piss you off, because you keep swearing at me and I don't care. So that happened to us in Spain. That's happened to us pretty much anywhere we've gone. And yeah, you know, it's a horrible experience to be stared at. You can literally feel your skin like getting red and like something like what's happening. It's a really bizarre experience.
It's unnerving. Like, you don't know what those people are thinking, or like why are they staring? Like, what is their plan? Is it because they think you're beautiful? Is it because they hate you with every fiber of their body? It's terrifying.
So it wasn't a nice experience, and I think I got married. I told my family about it, and they were like, "That's not happening," and I was like, "It is happening." I'm like, get on board or don't get on board. They didn't get on board. I'm still married, and 6 years later, I'm quite happy, and I'm really, really happy I made that decision. I have a beautiful daughter. It's been a great journey, and it's definitely worth leaving my family for. But it's so hard to find people you love and, you know, get married. And I have friends who are, you know, struggle with, and I'm so grateful I have someone that I fought for and went through that with. It kind of ties us. And, you know, I think you touched on it, Mo, like our cultures are we're so cultured that bonds us. There's a lot of like, oh, your family did that. Oh my God, we do that too. But it's also because we're so different in culture, we're constantly teaching ourselves and we're quite open about it. It's quite accepting rather than, oh, that's weird. Because it's like, that's so cool your family does that. Oh my God, that's so cool your family does that. And it's just like accepting of it. And that's been the nice part. And even though my family has rejected him, I say my family, just my parents, he's been like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Like, we get it. And his family gets it. And it's just not been an issue that they bring up to my face all the time. You know, if I was a mum and I got told your son's not good enough for my daughter, I'd be like, my son's an amazing man, like, screw you. But they don't throw it in my face. And I love them for that because they know I chose him.
Wow. One of your colleagues has just actually written, so your family haven't accepted it, ? And I think when we get that pressure from outside, walking down the street, that's one thing, isn't it? But like you just said, Sabah, when it's from inside our own families, it's very, 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 it's very sensitive and quite emotive, and it brings up a lot of things because it's, you know, this is affecting our lives. And actually, guys, one of the things that has really come to light as well is that even within interracial relationships across different cultures, you even have discrimination there, like in yourself, Sabah, and Mo's nodding, right? And Mo, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep. If you're African and it's like a Jamaican, maybe there's a discrepancy there. If you're from a certain place in Africa, maybe South Africa, and someone's from West Africa, say Nigeria, there's something
Indian
there.
and Pakistani, you can't do it even though you're both brown. My brother married an Indian woman and I'm Pakistani, and that wasn't good enough for my parents. And it's just like, you know, they bonded because they have the same, in their mind, they have the same similar enough culture. And yeah, it's always a thing. And you can't win. So I'm going to win by saying I'm happy.
Yeah.
Like, I have to have this relationship and I have to live this life. So I'm going to do what makes me happy.
And it's important, actually, isn't it, that love wins? Because love sees no color, no boundaries, no barriers, right? So yeah, and I'm still waiting to hear the story, Mo.
You're gonna hear some more wild stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's been situations, I think I already mentioned about the gums and that being some sort of dental problem, which it's not. I've also had situations where it's time for me to maybe meet some family members, and I've gone there, and just some of the questions that I've heard, or maybe some of the topics of conversation, I feel like the best representation of it is the movie Get Out. I remember sitting in there and just thinking, yep. First and foremost, talking about straight away, we're talking about Tiger Woods, we're talking about Michael Jordan, we're talking about Lewis Hamilton, we're talking about all of these conversations with people that I should just know about, or I should be interested into, or you must know what this is because you're Black. And for me, I just hate those types of conversations when it's like, you're kind of almost just, you're using whatever you know, and you're trying to use that in a way to maybe just start a conversation. But for me, it's like, maybe you should just listen and just talk to me as you would if my name was Nick or something like that and I was a white guy. But yeah, there's been many situations, like even certain things, like I would go for a handshake and instead I would get a spud. Stuff like that for me is just, you're doing too much. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Be honest. I'm a human being. Don't look at me and the first thing you see is, okay, this guy's a Black guy. He has dreadlocks, so I need to just put my fist up and bump him and say safe. I would rather just either give a head nod or just shake your hand or something. That for me is something that is respectful when it comes to meeting elders. Again, I grew up in a very kind of strict African household, and a lot of the culture is, you know, it goes from hierarchy in age, let's say. And I'm the youngest of 3. So I had 2 older brothers, and it was like, okay, if there's an elder in the room, in the house, wherever it is, you would always show them signs of respect. So if I'm ever meeting anyone that's older than me, in an interracial context situation, I would always go for a handshake, but often I've been met with a fist.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable, right? Because straight away, yeah, it's uncomfortable. You just think like, or when someone says, "Oh, I've got a black friend."
So what?
You're still waiting for the punchline, because that shouldn't lead to us having any kind of rapport, because okay, and it's like you're trying to prove something about why we can now have conversation, or what have you. How did you handle that, Mo? Those moments, right, where it's the Michael Jordan conversation, and it's getting a bit silly, right? Because it's not about you, it's about what makes the person who's talking to you feel comfortable. How do you kind of handle it?
I always, again, just try and navigate it in the best way possible. So whenever it comes to those types of topics, don't get me wrong, I like basketball, so Michael Jordan, maybe we can talk about. So maybe that stereotype I can hit, but generally just derailing the conversation and talking about something that maybe they are unaware that I'm aware of. And almost kind of just shocking them and just saying, actually, no, I'm not interested in football. I don't really watch football. Or no, I'm not really into that. I prefer talking about this. Let's talk about politics. And almost just hearing them or seeing them, the face, and go, oh, you know about that type of stuff? Okay, we can actually have a conversation. I've seen those moments where it's been a shock to them. And I feel like in those moments, they then see me as a person rather than a black man.
Wow. It's pretty sad, it makes me, although like, yeah, it's just really sad. What about you, Sabah and Renee? Have you had any of those moments where you come across somebody and they've kind of not overt racism, but covertly racist, in that it's like saying something really, really obvious to you that makes it to break the ice or to have a conversation because they're uncomfortable about your race?
I find it kind of a little bit the opposite. It's like when you can really see someone struggling to like constantly like hold back and never mention race and stay so shy away from it that you're like, oh yeah, I mean, we were quite literally in a meeting the other day, and I laughed. I know you've got the most Muslim name. You're going to go to the airport, you're definitely going to be stopped. And he's like, I really want to live in America. I was like, why? You're going to go to the airport and get stopped every time. And he's like, yeah, that's true. And we could laugh about it, but I've had, and that's fine. That's like that's real life for a lot of people. If you're Muslim, if you're hijab, or you're like, there's certain things that would definitely, the stereotypes that people catch you on. And I feel comfortable like addressing it, but it's obviously, I'm not making a joke of it. I know I'm brown, I can say that. And at the same time, like that's real life. So when people want to be like, oh, I can never say the word black and I can never say this, it makes me feel like actually you being uncomfortable with it makes me feel more uncomfortable about being here. And like, because you're not comfortable with it, are you trying to hide something? Is there something then you have a different agenda? I'd rather you just be like, just normal and like say what you'd want to say. And then it makes me be like, yeah, I'm glad you get it. Like, we do struggle. And I'm glad that's something you've noticed, because that's just real life rather than shy away from it. I think those are conversations that I keep being around. And it's happened at work as well. People are like, oh, like looked at me because I've mentioned I said brown or black, and they're like, and I'm like, well, of course that's acceptable. The fact that you don't think that's acceptable, now I'm like, okay, you're not around enough diverse people to know that that's an okay thing to do. And then that made me feel like I've done something inappropriate when really I haven't.
Yeah.
I was really worried about all of these things. So I've been with my partner for just over a year, but we've known each other for 5 years. And so in the last kind of like 6 months, I've met a lot of his family, like extended family. And obviously they're all completely white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired family. So I had all of these worries of like, what's it going to be like? Am I going to be accepted? Is it going to be uncomfortable? I can't escape because I'm having to drive like 3 hours to get there. Like, am I just going to be stuck in this hellhole? And I didn't have any of that at all. Like, I know that so far, every story you guys have told, I'm like, that didn't happen to me. I got to go to sleepovers, but it just hasn't. Maybe I don't notice it because I'm just not that aware, but I was really, really really worried to meet his family and had absolutely no problems. I was just like a hug when I walked in and talking about normal things, like how was your day? Where's your holiday? What do you do for work? All those kind of things. I do remember we went to the pub, me, my partner and his mum, and we got drunk. His mum didn't, but we did. And he went to the toilet and left me and her on our own. And I just remember asking her, and I was like, do you realize that the rest of your lineage is going to be brown? And she was like, oh yeah, I'm fully aware. It's fine. I was like, oh, okay, good. Just thought I'd double check that you're okay with that, because that's what's happening.
That's so funny you said that. My mother-in-law, like I'm Muslim, and she was really worried that, you know, her son marrying a Muslim woman, like, how's he going to change? She quite literally went to him like, you know, if you become Muslim, like, does that mean you're going to become a terrorist? And I was like, what, Mum? Why are you asking these questions? And I was like, what? And I was like, you watch too much CNN or some like really terrible shows, because I see her watching the news all the time. And like, she also has like she fosters a lot of kids, but especially if they're from like Afghanistan, so a lot of refugee kids. And so she'd be like, oh, Sabah, can you speak to him? Because I think he'll understand you. And I'm like, he's from Afghanistan. I don't speak the same language. But like to this day, if there's someone from Google, anyone who's non-Pakistani, she's never got a Pakistani kid, but it'll be someone like Syrian, Afghani. She's like, can you talk to them? And I was like, Mum, I can just about say salam, and that's about it. Like, I can't say anything else other than hello. Like, it's not the same. And it's like, to the point it's funny, you know, you just have to be like, okay, and constantly teach and educate her. But it happens even in our relationship with Dom's mum, say some stuff, and I'm like, oh God, like, Mum, no. And she'd be like, well, you know, Eliza's going to go to Sunday school, right? Like, go to church. And I was like, no, she's Muslim, Mum. Okay, well, she can go to Friday to that school, like to madrasa. And then Sunday she can go to church. And I was like, I think that's a bit confusing for her. I think we'll just stick to, like, if she's going to go to an Islamic, like, Friday things, like, she'll go to an Islamic madrasa and that's it. She's like, yeah, okay, we'll figure out how she can get into the Sunday one. I was like, okay. And like, she's like, after 6 years, like, you know, now we talk about it, and it just doesn't matter to her anymore. But it used to be a thing, she'd mention it so much, and you're like, finally, like, we're getting there. But yeah, even in our relationship, that happens quite a lot when Dom's mum mentions these stuff.
This is so interesting. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Renee, even though you had seemingly, your experience has been, you know, without too many sort of like, not anything really too incredibly terrible has happened for you, and I'm glad. Even the fact that when your other half was in the bathroom, and then you said that, even the fact that you had to say that for me is still a thing.
Because I thought about it, like, my whole family is white, and then just Renee. Like, any family photos, and then just Renee is in there.
We still have to excuse ourselves in some way, right?
We went to visit my great nan, who is 94. She lives in Scotland. She loves me to pieces, and I know that. But as we drove around the corner to her house, like, my partner came with me. As we drove around the corner to her house, my head just flooded with all of these things of like, what if she doesn't realize it's me? What if she thinks that I'm my mum or I'm my aunt? And we've been talking on the phone, and she's forgotten who Renee is, and she's thinking, oh, Renee is the brunette with the light skin and the green eyes. Like, what if she thinks I'm someone else? I just went through this whole panic and anxiety and just shut down. And she saw us get out of the car, and all I could see was her like frantically like waving, like, oh my God, yes, my great granddaughter's here, I'm so happy, and like guilt tripping us into not leaving her the next day. And I was like, why did I think that this woman who I know loves me, who, yes, I haven't seen in 4 years because she lives in the middle of nowhere, like 8-hour drive away, but why did I think that she wouldn't remember who I was and absolutely dote on us? The little things like that is what you say. It's like, I feel like I have to apologize for it. Like, I feel like you have
to apologize for it. And even your example, Sabah, you've got race, and then you have religion, right? So there's so many different layers, and I'd like to actually go on now and speak about something that is actually, before I go on, there's something, one of the comments I'd like to read from your colleague. that has said, I think we should be introducing lessons to help young people understand and appreciate each other's cultures and cultural differences as part of the curriculum, educating against ignorance. So, and I think that's really important. And I think possibly, Renee, in your partner's family, they've probably done some of that work, because that work is really important from a young age. And now I'd like to speak about a stigma that is very well known within our cultures about absent fathers, especially overarching topic about Black absent fathers. So there is a stigma about Black absent fathers, right? What are some of the reasons that you think this may be? And you're getting great comments, but everyone's saying thank you, thank you, thank you. They're really loving this show. So I'll just say again, there is a stigma about Black absent fathers. What are some of the reasons that you think this may be?
I think it's a generalization. I think a lot of things that are negative about all of the stories that we've heard over this whole series and that everyone will share and that everyone's sharing this month, it's all a generalization. Because really, can you say that it is a Black man thing that all Black men are going to leave their children? Like, we don't know the reasons. Yes, fair. My mum was a single mum and my dad wasn't around, but that was her choice. She chose that he wasn't good enough to be around us. So she brought me up herself. And I don't know too much about the reasons behind all of that, but I just think it's a generalization that people need to stop making, because, Black men are still men and they still have their values. And like, hearing what you said about your mum, Mo, like, your mum sounds incredible. She's brought you up so well. Like, I'm loving all of the things that she's done with you guys as you were growing up. And, that person was brought up by a woman, like, as well as a man, like that man, for example. I mean, so it's just a generalization that I just don't think people should make.
Yeah, and thank you again. Shout out, Mama, if you're listening. I think one point I made about before, almost being labeled something and kind of that being your destiny, and this is what you are, so this is your future, and this is going to dictate how you should be or who you should be. I think, again, just to kind of rebuttal what Renee is saying, I think we need to change the narrative. If it's statistics and it's, we can find evidence and say, statistically that it does occur more of Black. So what? Let's stop looking at all of the nitty-gritty details and try and change the narrative so it can be more of a positive thing. So it's more reinforced in that way. Because again, I had that opportunity where I was aware of, okay, almost I'm in the matrix. So this is how the matrix works. If we can do the same thing and again, change the narrative and not say, it's such a thing or it's common for Black men not to be around their kids. I think I completely disagree with that statement. It's way too general. There's so many of us in this world, on this planet. If you want to look at statistics, look at those statistics of how many of the population in the world is Black or Asian. And when you really drill down to it, most of it is based on situations or where you are or something. There is some.
It's a lot to do with the American and it's systematic racism, because the reason they've not been, I think if we drill it down to the reason they aren't available or around is that because, a relationship broke down, or I decided to leave my wife or partner, or is it because I was taken away? If you look at America and their prison system and the proportion and percentage of men that are in prison versus how many actually exist in America, it's so much proportionally high. So yes, they've created that stereotype because they've enforced it, and that continues, and that's similar in the UK system. And I love the point that you made, Mo. If we go back to back home, if we look at countries where there are a majority of Black people, is that a normal thing? Does that happen regularly? At least not in countries like majority of countries in Africa, maybe again in the Caribbean, but that's again like through generations of like screwing with people, trauma that's happened, not having stability in their life. There's reasons behind it. I don't think someone who's come from a loving home and never had any trauma, never been abused by the police and continuously, set up by the system, if you don't have that generational trauma, are you like that? Versus you've continuously had that in America or in the UK, even in the Caribbean, there is systematic racism, even if you're majority Black, because they've had generations of trauma coming all the way through from slavery, and that's affected them as people. And that happens, and you continue that trauma within children, within your families. It's a real thing that's happened, and I think that's why those statistics exist, and that's why that culture exists, and we can continue it. And I love what you said. We need to change that narrative.
I love what you said, Sabah, when you said generational trauma, because statistically, that is a massive, massive part of it. And it's probably another show, but the social dynamics as well and the social footprint of where somebody starts off has a lot to do with it as well. And how those different intersections and how the social footprint of a Black man is created. And if you have systematic oppression, systematic racism, financial oppression, because you can't continue, which of course affects the family home. So there are so many different reasons why statistically it would disproportionately affect the Black home more than anyone else. Just like how COVID affected more of the Black, Asian and ethnic demographic, because of the fact of how people were living, right? And sorry, was you going to say something?
No. I think, Sabah, you've really rounded off that point perfectly. And I think someone just put in the comments as well, context is everything. And,
Yes.
People love to hold on to, we have this statistic, but really drill down into it. And once you drill down into it, you start to unpick and really understand, okay, these are maybe some of the things that are causing these trends or things to happen. And that's where you can really find the root to the solution.
I love as well, like statistics are malleable. You can say that this percentage of this is this and say that it's true. But are you looking at the whole population, or are you just looking at a specific thing to get the statistic that you want for your survey or for your results or for your promotion? If you properly look into research and statistics, yes, you can say that it's statistically true. But what's statistically true? What did they actually look into? What source? What actual group of people did they test that on to come out with a statistic? I completely agree with you guys. Context is everything, and let's change that narrative because it's just not important.
And Ben says, spot on, suggesting it's a problem with Black men is ignoring the fact that society fails Black men.
I was watching a clip from LBC when Nigel Farage was on it, and he said something about, like, in East London, how the majority of children in schools in East London, I think they meant Bethnal Green or somewhere, they don't speak, they don't speak English. And and the presenter was like, no, I think you mean it's not their first language. Like, you're using a stat to say, the majority, over 50% of children who go to this school don't speak English. And he goes, don't speak English as their first language, but they speak English. So their mother tongue may be something like Bengali or Urdu or Hindi, whatever it might be, but they still speak English. You just purposely left that, like, narrative out. And this, Nigel Farage's children apparently speak German, and they would fall into that statistic. But he's like, no, it's different.
You tailor statistics to tell the story you want to tell.
Yeah. Time's ticking on, so I just want to quickly cover something, and if one of you could cover this. What is in a name? So if you can, one of you can give an example about how cultural names have impacted us in our life very quickly before we wrap up. So have any of you got an example of that? Any questions about names, any pressure about names, any funny stories, or just, just because you don't have an English name or a conventional British name? My
name is Sabah. It's quite, for me, sounds quite easy to say, and people still get it quite wrong. And I find it quite funny. And it's always like, where are you from? Because of that. And, even when my daughter was born, I had to really think about her name. I really wanted her to have a Pakistani name because she's half Black. And I was like, well, she's going to look Black, and that's great. But I want her to have a cultural association to my name, because most people think a mixed race child is white and Black. And she's not white and Black. She's Pakistani and Black. So if I give her a Pakistani name, and she's Black, people are like, okay, give her something back to herself, and people still get her name wrong. Her family get her name wrong, and it's Eliza, and it's quite similar to Eliza. I didn't even think of that, and so yeah, you do have to think a lot. For me, I had to think a lot about names.
I just wanted to read out what one of your colleagues have said. Danielle has said, in psychology research, for example, 78% of research is carried out on white Westerners between the age of 18 to 25, university age, primary samples for research. So sample is key. So wow, right? Going back to where we get these statistics from, right? So yeah, and you're getting so many different messages from your colleagues just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. We are running out of time. So I'd just like to say, thank you to all of you going forward. And if you can just give me very quickly one key thing that you would like to say to somebody about, what a takeaway, one takeaway about what you can do going forward, to increase your diversity, your knowledge of diversity, inclusion, other people, or anything else, anything at all that any of you want to say is a quick takeaway.
People are people, are people, are people, are people, are people, are people. We are all people. We may look different. We all look different, and that's brilliant. It would be a very boring picture if we didn't. So just treat everyone the same.
Love it.
I would say Black history is more than just slavery. There was so much history before that. There's so many great things. So in terms of just doing your research, really, again, drill down and understand about what Black people are, where they came from, what their heritage is, why they have these cultures, why we have these certain conversations, and why we are maybe still feeling oppressed, or, a really key point that Sabah mentioned of generational trauma. Do your research and really, really understand before everything else.
Love that. Thank you, Mo. And Sabah?
I'm going to kind of extend on what Mo said. It's like, do your research. Don't expect people of color to teach you.
Yes.
So listen, but don't expect us to teach you. I'm sharing my experience, but doesn't mean I'm going to feed you everything. But be open to listening and do your own research, because it's not our jobs to teach you. You should want to learn about the people you work with and the society you live in.
Thank you ever so much to you all, to Renee, to Mo, and to Sabah. Thank you ever so much for coming on and being part of the And Digital Panel second series, digging deeper on the Power Hour with myself today. I hope you all have a fantastic, fantastic weekend, and we'll speak to you soon. And just thank you ever so much for being here. It's been an excellent and fantastic show. So
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you ever so much. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye. All the best. You have been locked into the Power Hour.